Hello, dear friends. Welcome to this week's edition of Kabbalah Explained Simply. We've got a great show for you today. We're going to talk about Psalms. What is the meaning of Psalms? How do we access the hidden power in Psalms? Psalms comes from, in Hebrew it's called Tilim. And it comes from a word called Hallel. And you know this from the word hallelujah. That's where it comes from. And of course, it means to praise and to glorify. To praise and glorify, we know what it's talking about. It's talking about the upper force, the creator of reality. And Psalms is a very special book. So we're going to get into it right now. And we're going to open it up, understand its meaning, how it applies to our life practically, and how we can use this special force to improve our existence in reality, in the true reality in which we exist. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and dive into the Psalms. And first, I'm going to play a rather provocative, or read a rather provocative psalm, so we can get an idea of the kind of spectrum of this book. So let's start with the first one, and then we'll read a sort of opposite psalm that comes from the other direction. They said, "Come, let us destroy them, and the name of Israel will no longer be remembered." O daughter of Babylon, who is destined to be plundered, praiseworthy is he who repays what you have done to us. Praiseworthy is he who will take your infants and dash them against a rock. Okay, so that's not the kind of psalm that's usually read in churches, in synagogues, but it exists there, and all of the religions, the major religions generally respect this book. It's used as part of the liturgy and worship, in Christianity, in Judaism. It's acknowledged in the Quran, but usually not. The focus is not those kind, right? And those are a little bit hard to make sense of in the context of the title of the book, which is to praise and to glorify. So usually we read more along the lines of the one that I'm going to show you now, which is more along the lines of praising and glorifying. Let's take a look at this, and then we'll see kind of how we reconcile these two ends of it. Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs. Know that the Lord is the Creator. It is he who made us, and we are his. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name, for the Lord is good, and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all the generations. Okay, so that one was more along the lines of praising and glorifying the Creator and not complaining to the Creator, cursing one's enemies, the things that we don't like, and wishing for really bad outcomes for them. So how can these two things both exist in this book of Psalms? The former of which we usually don't pay a lot of attention to. Like I said, it's not being read usually in church services and synagogues. We know it's there somewhere. We don't know quite how to make sense of it. Now, in the connection between these two opposites, and this is why I read these two very opposite Psalms, lies the power of Psalms, actually. So as usual, we like to kind of only look at the good, and that's great. But there's also a lot of this bellicosity, this warlike talk about being in exile, about how one's enemies pursue them all the day. And so we need to kind of see like why the author wrote in such divergent ways. So divergent are these ways that scholars for a long time thought they were unsure about who really wrote Psalms. Legend had it that it was written by King David, but as time went on, they started to speculate that maybe it was written by various authors because they're so different, first of all, these different Psalms. And in addition to that, there's a few names attached to the different Psalms. For example, you'll have a Psalm by Asaph. You'll have a Psalm by the brothers, by the sons of Korah, or even of Moses. There's a Psalm of Moses. So perhaps it was written by these different authors, or maybe it was just written by a bunch of people over the course of the generations, which seemed likely to a lot of scholars. And that makes sense because if we look at when David lived, King David lived in the 10th century BCE. If he lived at all, right? Scholars also aren't sure about that. If we look at Psalm 79, it describes the destruction of Jerusalem by the Babylonians and the destruction of the temple. And that's 500 years after David lived. So you see the problem with ascribing Psalms to David if it's describing things that definitely happened after King David. Psalm 137 describes the Babylonian exile, or refers to it, which began in 586 BCE after the destruction of the first temple in Jerusalem. Psalm 126 talks about the return of the exiles from Babylon and the rebuilding of the temple, which occurred in the 6th century BCE, 600 years after David. Psalm 74 describes the destruction of the temple by foreign enemies, which could refer to either the Babylonian destruction in 586 BCE or the Roman destruction in 70 CE. So that's one thing that kind of cast doubt on David being the author. Then something else happened. So in 1956, in a cave near the Dead Sea, this is the Dead Sea, and there's a cave surrounding it. This is a sea in Israel, or really a lake in Israel, a salt lake, and they discovered there the Great Psalms Scroll, as they call it. The Great Psalms Scroll is from the 6th century BCE, again discovered in 1956. And this is a total Psalms. It's all the Psalms together in one volume from some tribe, some group, some villagers that lived somewhere. They were maybe in hiding or in their own community, and they had this whole book of Psalms. So it didn't work out for those scholars that said, maybe over the last 2,000 years, this scholar added and then that writer added, and then later it was all compiled together. No, here, 600 years, 600 BCE, the Psalms book was discovered there, completely intact. And this led scholars to think that probably it had been in circulation as one volume, as one book for quite a long time, much longer than many had thought before. Then there's this. In 1993 was discovered the Tel Dan stele. And, prior to this, scholars thought that maybe David never really existed at all. Maybe he was like some legend or some mythological figure or a composite of different personalities that existed. And that would totally make sense and go with the fact that such different psalms exist there. Some really seemingly complainy psalms, cursing one's enemies, and some really happy as if every day is the best day of my life type of psalms. But then in 1993, that myth was dispelled. The Tel Dan stele, it dates back to the 9th century BCE, so almost 3,000 years ago. Contemporary with David, with what was either mythological or a historical figure, and it turns out that it's actually talking about King David from the perspective of a king who came and was an enemy of David and conquered the land, and writes about his conquest and how he kicked David's butt and all that. So this kind of dispels those myths that the scholars were kind of writing on. It turns out that David actually existed as a single person, and that his book, which Kabbalists say is actually written by King David, it's King David's book, his book existed for thousands of years as a single book. So then how do we reconcile then all of these seeming contradictions? So the fact that several authors are cited in the text itself, from Moses to Asaph, sons of Korah, and several others, the fact that they're very, is this somebody with bipolar disorder, that some days he's extremely happy, some days he's extremely sad, or perhaps it's different personalities. How do we reconcile these contradictions? So it all gets fixed, actually, and it all works out if we kind of correct our lens a little bit. We're seeing things through a lens, through a kind of kaleidoscope that kind of breaks the reality into pieces. And accordingly, when we look at a Kabbalistic text, we also see it broken into pieces. We can't quite make sense of all of the elements, and it seems to be contradicting itself. And if it's the wisdom of Kabbalah, then certainly there will be contradictions. Because in the true reality, every single thing is a thing and its opposite together. Kabbalists call this, as far as light excels darkness. So only to the extent that I know about light, I can know about darkness. I can have discernments in it. Only if I know about sweet, I can know what salty is. If my whole life is sweet, it doesn't taste sweet to me. It's like a prince that's born in a king's palace, like a snotty-nosed prince that knows nothing but goodness. And so, he doesn't really have any flavors in this goodness. Or if my life is only bad, really like, hell on earth, true darkness, then I don't exactly know what's good. And this is kind of what our life is like, to tell you the truth. That in all of reality, there is no lower state than where we are. This is the bottom of the bottom. And that's why you don't need to worry. You can only really go up from here. So in anything that's Kabbalistic, since Kabbalists are saying that the wisdom of Kabbalah is called the wisdom of truth, you will always have a thing and its opposite. And then there's something in between these two opposites where you attain an upper reality. You attain a spiritual reality between the two opposites. And it's like this in our world in many ways, right? I mentioned sweet and salty, but it's in every single thing. In an atom, you have electrons, protons, you have hot and cold. Everything is built on opposites. And so this is why, maybe for religious purposes, it's preferable to, read the really positive, kind of uplifting Psalms. But there's also a value in what David wrote about, his enemies and all those kinds of things. And here's a quote. Here's a quote that we're going to read from the Kabbalist Bala, where he describes kind of what our approach needs to be with respect to the contradictions that we see in Psalms. And we're going to see that, why are we talking about this? It's because in our life, we're basically always in a situation like King David, to some extent, almost. I'll explain in a minute. But the Psalms actually pertain to us. They're not some high, special, sacred, holy book that should be on a shelf somewhere and we'll all just appreciate it from afar. We know it's good, but it's not related to us. It's actually totally related to our life. It's written for us, and it's kind of a manual that can be used, like maybe a recipe book, you could say, if we know how to use it. So we'll get into that. But very important here when we're looking at this book, because it seems like a history book, really. Because it's very confusing, the things that I just brought up, not to confuse us about history, but to bring up the things that we're all already confused about. Right? We're confused about the fact that when we open this book, it really seems like it's talking about a historical figure. Because it refers to events in history that we know actually happened. O daughter of Babylon, we know that, where Iraq is right now, that's more or less where the ancient Babylon was. So it's referring to a city that existed who is destined to be plundered. It's probably talking about the conquerors of the people of Israel. We know that who would become the Israelis, the Hebrews, the Jews, they were promised this land of, overflowing with milk and honey. And they went to this land that wasn't called Israel yet. They went to this land and they had to conquer it. They had to fight several peoples, and that those peoples flanked them really forever. That nothing has changed. And it was never the situation that they were free of these people with whom they were warring all of the time. And so we know that these are historical things, and it says, praiseworthy is he who repays what you have done to us. He's referring to probably the Babylonian exile, when the Jews were expelled from the land and then they were in exile and lived under the Babylonian king. Praiseworthy is he who, and then this sounds really mean. I mean, there's nobody we hate enough that we're thinking about smashing one's infants against a rock. And also, how can a holy person talk like this? How can you be in connection with the Creator and talk like this? More reasonable, more sensible for one who is in connection with the Creator is this psalm. This psalm, this is what we expect from a holy person. Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs. Know that the Lord is the Creator. It is he who made us, and we are his. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. This is really exultant. This is really in praise of the Creator. And who can really feel this way? I mean, it's nice, it's beautiful to hear on a Saturday or a Sunday in some service. It's nice to hear and get uplifted, but who can really feel this way in each and every moment? And this, Kabbalists tell us, is how we need to be in every single moment. There's a saying, one only advances in joy. Meaning, if I'm not in joy, then coming to me is only bad things. More bad than I'm already feeling right now, because I'm not advancing towards the goal of life. If I feel myself advancing towards the goal of life, then certainly I'll be in joy. If you felt that you were about to get $1 billion tomorrow, it's coming, how would it change your day? Right? So what you're about to get from the upper force in the purpose of life, in the plan that was created for you, is something much more than $1 billion. It includes everything and everything, all kinds of pleasures that can exist in all different vessels, meaning all different desires that I have, and even ones that aren't uncovered yet, that I don't know about yet, but are destined to be revealed. They're all destined to be fulfilled, such that it's an adventure through all of these different pleasures, more and more being revealed, more and more expanding. And this is how I need to feel, that I'm advancing towards such a beautiful goal. So that's why this is really like a correct approach, right? Shout for joy to the Lord. If I knew I was getting such things, I would be. All the earth. This means, everybody should be in this, because the plan of creation is for everyone to receive all goodness. Worship the Lord with gladness, thanking him for all that he's done for us, that he only thought about good for us. Come before him with joyful songs. Know that the Lord is the Creator. It is he who made us, and we are his. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. So this, long story short, this is the correct approach to the upper force, and it's what we need to feel. And a Kabbalist is one who attains this. And a Kabbalist doesn't just have some philosophical idea that maybe it's like that, or psychologically I tell myself that everything's okay, like you really do have to do in this world, right? To be happy in this world, no matter who you are, no matter how famous or how rich or how whatever, you pretty much have to do psychological jujitsu on yourself each day to convince yourself that it's worth it to get up, to, go to work, to do what you need to do. It's a sort of sticking of our heads in the sand. And Kabbalists who attain the upper reality don't feel that way at all. They don't feel that they're, concealing from themselves all the negative. I don't even want to look at the news, right? Because it's just so depressing. They don't feel this way. And if King David is in fact a Kabbalist, which Kabbalah says that he was a Kabbalist, then this quote makes sense, but this quote really doesn't. dashing infants against a rock, because Kabbalah tells us that my attitude towards everyone in the world has to be good. My attitude has to be positive for them, because I need to become like the upper force. That's what a Kabbalist becomes. He becomes like the upper force. And since he's like the upper force, he also has the powers of the upper force. He has his qualities. He has the ability to operate the forces of creation. But to get this ability, this does exist in nature. It's not some miracle. It's something that we can access, but not willy-nilly, not like I want to be able to just access it and be like Harry Potter, that now I can perform spells. This isn't permitted. You see in Harry Potter that not everybody uses the magic in the right way, right? Well, the creator, the upper force, did not build reality in such a way that you'll be able to access the forces of nature that can be harmful to others. This is called, in Kabbalah, it's called, I will observe you a lot from above and observe yourself a little from below. Observe yourself a little from below, but I'll watch you a lot from above. And this means that we're in this kind of playground where we need to try to become like the upper force in all of our qualities, the starting point of which is to have this good attitude towards others. This is the least possible thing. This is the least possible equivalence of form with the Creator, that I at least don't want to do bad to others. And if I check myself every day on the highway, on the roads, at work, can I really say that I never for a moment feel bad, ill will towards anyone? I never feel that, what I would do to, No, I always have an attitude towards others, minimum, that I don't want to harm them. If so, then I'm already a little bit in equivalence of form with the upper force, because his attitude towards each and every person, the most evil, so-called, the best, the whatever, he looks at it like a mother looks at her 10 children. They can feud and fight, but she, towards them, she loves each and every one of them. Not this one more than the other. They're all precious to her. And their bad qualities, quote unquote, are cute. They're adorable. She loves all of their qualities. Why am I saying this? Because look at this. This is a Kabbalist. He says he wants to do to his enemies what they've done to him. Praiseworthy is whoever will take their babies and smash their heads. It's impossible that this could be the attitude of a Kabbalist, if we're viewing this in an external way. Of course, guess what? This is a code. So, as you know, there are 4 languages, one of which is called the language of the Torah, or the language of the Bible. And it can seem, we talk deeply in our courses about this. You can take our courses on Kabbalah.info. So I can't get into it deeply here, but this is one of those 4 languages that we learn about that Psalms is written in. And so it's actually not talking about history. It's not talking about people. It's not talking about doing something in this world. It's talking about something else. And we'll see what that is right here. So this is what Kabbalist Dr. Michael Lightman says. I advise you to read Psalms. Bear in mind that they only apply to the one who reads them. So if I'm reading Psalms, it's not about history, it's about me. And it's about me in this very moment. So it's about my state. How could it be? I don't know. The Kabbalists say that this is the way it is, that if I'm reading it right now, whatever I'm reading, it's about my current state. Bear in mind that they only apply to the one who reads them. They talk only about what happens within a person, about his properties, only about personal relationships, specifically between a person and the Creator, and not about external objects or events. So that's interesting, because this definitely seems to be talking about other people. In fact, the one that we just read, it doesn't even mention the Creator. So that's very interesting what this Kabbalist, Dr. Lightman, says. You know, if we go back to the quote, you know, it says, "O daughter of Babylon," so he's talking about, you know, the Babylonians, "who's destined to be plundered. Praiseworthy is he who repays what you have done to us." That's very confusing for me, because I heard from Kabbalists that there's an upper force that's good and does good. There's none else besides him. Enod milvado, as Kabbalists say. This is the cornerstone of Kabbalah. Enod milvado. There's none else besides him. And he's good that does good. Tovu mativ. First of all, this seems to be really referring to people, not the Creator. And the Creator is supposed to fill the whole of reality. So it's very confusing. So let's take a look. We've got a lot of friends here. Good to see you all. Peter Marshall from South Africa, Julie from Utah, Abraham from Ethiopia, Sagar from Bulgaria, Miela from Romania, taught by Emeralds from USA South, Joe from California, hi Ruth, Bob from Wales, UK, Miriam from New Mexico, Shalom from New York, from Raven, Pamela from California, Bonjour from Lisa, Roslita from Vienna, Debbie. Okay, we have friends from everywhere and everywhere. It's awesome to see you all. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. If you have any questions, go ahead and write them into the chat, and I'll try to answer as we go on. But we'll just go ahead and continue. So as we see here, it's very confusing, and that is circling back to what I said about reality, that everything is composed of opposites, specifically in the wisdom of Kabbalah. And it was designed like this, not to confuse us. You know, it wasn't designed on purpose so that we would be all confused in what reality we are, and should we believe in the Creator, not believe in the Creator, should we curse our enemies? And we all go through, you know, maybe we're not fighting for a whole land and then being exiled from it, but we're all going through situations where our fortunes rise and fall. And we're always looking for someone to blame, even if it's ourselves, even if we blame ourselves, which usually we don't, but it doesn't matter. We're always looking for someone to blame. And we're not praising and exalting the situation. Now, let's see what a correct approach would be to this, to our reality and to the book of Psalms, so that we can kind of make sense of it. For that, we need the cornerstone article of the wisdom of Kabbalah. This article is called None Else Besides Him. And it's from this beautiful little book. This is my favorite edition. It's pocket size and it's really sturdy. I took an example from the Kabbalist Rabash, and I keep this little volume with me wherever I go. I also have it on my phone, but there's something special in a physical book. Nevertheless, a physical book has a spiritual root, And there is a power in that book that just isn't in the online. It's not in your device. A book is a book. But anyway, this is the cornerstone article of the wisdom of Kabbalah. So much so that if you realize this, there's actually nothing else. You can pass through all of the spiritual degrees just by realizing this. And the thousands and thousands of additional pages of Kabbalistic text and lessons, they're all just the details of none else besides him. So let's read just a little bit of it. It says, "It is written, Ein od milvado, there's none else besides him." This means that there's no other force in the world that has the ability to do anything against him, the Creator. And what man sees that there are things in the world that deny the higher household, the providence of the Creator, that he's controlling everything, that he's moving my lips right now, operating my thoughts, operating all of my organs, operating the whole reality, just like he's operating, I'm not operating my lungs, my heart, right? That's kind of done for me, right? But I still consider it me, strangely, even though I have no free will over it. Similarly, the Creator is also operating the whole of reality. So some of reality he's operating in a kind of clear way, to some extent, maybe. But mostly it's in all concealment. It's in complete concealment. Why? Why does he let me think that I've got my boss, my kids, my wife, these different forces, that my neighbors that are against me, politicians, different nations, thieves, drug dealers? Why does he let me think so? Well, look, the reason is that this is his will, the Creator's will. Now, that doesn't sound like a very good Creator. So I can accept this maybe in like a religious way, which is fine. That's one way to accept it. But, that the Creator is good, even though it's not so good, but the Creator is good. No, he's good. Creator's great. I can accept it like that. And in a way, that's, if I'm being realistic, that's kind of like a spouse that abuses me, that beats me, and I, every night I get beat, or on the weekend I get beat, and I'm all bruised, but then I say, but that's not really him. That's not who he is. It's kind of like this, that the Creator's really good, even though I see all these other things that he's doing. So that's the religious approach. That's one approach to the upper force. It's not good, it's not bad. It's just an approach, right? That the Creator didn't make it that any of us will be able to look at our reality and say, every day is the best day of my life. Today is better than yesterday. I wonder what tomorrow will hold. He didn't allow this to be the case. And there's a special reason. And that reason is not because after this life, it'll be okay, or it'll be good, or that the bad people will get their punishment. It's not to confuse us. It's not to make us have to justify the Creator, even though he's doing all these bad things in front of my eyes in the news and everywhere in my life. It's not to be confusing or to be mean or to cause us to suffer and then make up for it later. I beat you, but here's like a dinner on the town and, a wonderful day. No, there's actually a totally different reason. And here it says it's deemed a correction called the left rejects and the right adducts. Meaning it's kind of a flirt. Meaning life becomes a game that I start viewing all of the things in my reality in a totally different way. Just one thing, though. The Kabbalistic books never give you what's called the middle line. They only give you the left line and the right line. And I can draw this for you real quick, just so that it's kind of clear. So in the book, in the psalm here, what we have are the reason why you have the contradiction is, and you have the really praising the Creator, and then you have the cursing of the situation, is because the cursing of the situation, which is all the bad, is called this left line, the left line. And later on there will be something too. Oh, let's make this pink and beautiful. Well, it's not so beautiful, but you have the left line and the right line, and later on in the middle you'll have what is called the middle line. And actually, the middle line is not really that straight. So left, with an L, left and right. So again, the left line was they want to kill the babies of their enemies. It's all the bad, whatever is bad. And from above in our life, and this is why to feel good on a daily basis, I really need to restrict my life. I need to restrict my vision of reality, where I don't see that just across the border there's, sex trafficking and drugs, and, there were 13 murders yesterday. I need to actually go really close to my block, which hopefully I found for myself a little haven, like a safe block and a little job that I can feel safe, and I fixed my house up so that it's nice and safe and good. I need to really restrict myself in order to just feel kind of okay. That's because from nature only comes the left line. And that's what he's talking about when he says he's cursing his enemies and all this stuff, right? Only the left line. Now, every once in a while, you have the right line, and that's, to be perfectly honest, is only when the point in the heart awakens. Meaning it's only when this quest, this internal quest to discover the meaning of my life awakens and I start coming to the wisdom of Kabbalah. That's called the right line, and that's what King David is talking about when he says, exalt the Creator, be in joy every moment. This is only when I come to this sensation of there's none else besides him. Now, once in a while in life, I'm actually awakened, like you are now. If you're here, you have to be, otherwise, why are you listening to this guy? So you're awakened in this moment, and that means that you have the possibility to start building what's called the middle line, which again, David doesn't give us here. The Kabbalist doesn't give us the middle line, and that's why we're so confused. Sometimes he's thanking the Creator, positive, praising, true to the name, Tehillim, Psalms, praise and thanksgiving. Sometimes he's cursing his enemies, and he doesn't work it out for us. Why? Because we have to work it out, because when we form out of the two opposites that we have in life, which are the negative, all the negative, which is basically the only thing that the Creator gives us in our life, except for a little bit of good. Why? For the same reason that in a chocolate chip cookie, you need not just sugar, but you need a little bit of salt. You don't really want to taste the salt, but the salt is there because on your taste bud, it accentuates the sweetness. It's less than the sweetness, and it's just enough of a pinch to make you think, wow, this is a really sweet cookie, really good, perfect. Similarly, the Creator in our life gives us a little bit of good, but that's only so that we'll feel the bad. Why? Not because he hates us. He actually loves us very, very much. It's just that he wants us to be like him. How do we become like him? Only by this combination of the left and the right together. And that's why they both exist in Psalms. That's why you have the different Psalms. And it's not that we should only read the good ones and forget about the bad ones. Now, I'm going to just show you quickly how this works. We go more into detail in our courses, but basically I take, and this is not a manual, you're not going to know how to do it, but I take from the left what I'm getting and I move it to the right. When I move it to the right, I correct it. It becomes corrected, and I see the world as beautiful and good. Now, this is different from closing my eyes to the bad, right? This is actually rising above the bad and turning it into good, using it. Nothing bad disappears. The enemies that were there, the Babylonian daughters that he wanted to smash their babies, that doesn't disappear, but in a way that I could not imagine. That all of my enemies in the world, they're such jerks, they're irredeemable. No, they're redeemed. I don't see how, but it just so happens. And it's not that it disappears or gets erased. Nothing gets erased. I just see it through new glasses that oh my God, it's so good that my worst, the people I didn't want to have anything to do with, become the most precious to me. And I feel I want to be connected with them and with the whole world. Now, just to finish this up, look, when you go to the right, you go to that state that he describes there, where everything's beautiful, everything's good. When you go into that state, guess what? You're in perfection. Everything is perfect. Now you need to take from the left even more bad and turn it into good. Now, this going from one to the other is actually, this is called the middle line. That's the middle line. And this is what really confuses people about the wisdom of Kabbalah. This is also why people think that the wisdom of Kabbalah contradicts itself. Didn't the teacher say that before and now he's saying this? He's contradicting himself. And this is why people leave the wisdom of Kabbalah, because they can't reconcile these two things. Or they're like people's approach to Psalms, which is where I only read the good stuff. The bad stuff, I don't know. We're not reading that today. But they only look at the good, meaning I try to approach Psalms in the way that I try to approach life, which is only looking at the things that are pleasant to me, meaning that feel good in my will to receive, my desire to receive pleasure. Now, let's see from the Kabbalist Dr. Michael Lightman, let's see what he writes about Psalms. Because now you're not, without our courses, of course, and taking them seriously, you're not going to be able to do the things that we just talked about. So I want to give you something practical that you can actually use today, because there's something, what we just talked about is basically like knowing how to use Psalms as a recipe book. Meaning there are literal instructions there coded in where I discover that all of the things that he talks about are actually internal inside me. They're my qualities. I didn't notice that they were there. I didn't know I had such qualities. I knew I had such qualities as I like certain shows on Netflix. I like walks on the beach. I knew those things about myself. I didn't know that I have spiritual qualities that I never quite unearth because I just don't pay attention to them. And so I could actually discover the states that King David, who was a Kabbalist, is describing. I could discover them right now in me, except for one thing. I never quite get to those states. Why? Because I always just go with the state that I'm given from above. Meaning from above, they put in me a good mood or a bad mood, and then I go, okay, I'm in a bad mood now. And that's me. That's how I feel, and that's who I am, and I'm in a bad mood. And then sometimes I feel totally on top of the world, and now I'm in a good mood. And if I see myself having a happy state for a long time, I just start describing myself as a happy person. I'm just a happy person. I'm a morning person because I always feel good in the mornings, or I'm a night person. So I start defining myself by the things that the Creator is doing to me in repetition. So then I say, that's probably me. But guess what? That's just the Creator, the upper force, the none else besides Him, who is making me think that I'm like this and like that. So He does it to me again and again. So then I'm a morning person. Or He puts me in a bad mood all the time, so I'm a surly, grouchy kind of person. Or I'm a happy-go-lucky person because He does it all the time. So I always go with the states, don't realize that they come from the Creator because He purposefully conceals that, because once it's in me, I feel like I'm the owner of it. It's in me. And then I go with, meaning act out exactly what He tells me to do. So sometimes He tells me to flip off somebody on the road, so I flip them off. Or sometimes He tells me to feel like flipping them off, but restrict myself, so I restrict myself. And I always go with the state that He gives me. I've never not gone with that state, and that's why I don't discover all of these different states, because as soon as I go against the Creator, this force that's making me go like this and like that, I start this work in the 3 lines. How do I start this work in the 3 lines? This I can tell you. So let's look at this quote from Dr. Michael Lightman. Psalms are songs, which King David, which is the representative of this sphira, the quality of Malchut, revealed in the darkness. Their revelation of the light of Chokmah in the light of Hasidim. Don't worry about what that is. There are different lights. Light is pleasure, and these are a couple of the different kinds of lights. Sometimes it seems to us that King David cries, not knowing what to do, and hides from enemies. Yet in this darkness, he reveals Hasidim, the Creator's mercy. Thus, it's a song. First, we need to reveal the right line, faith or Hasidim, while suppressing the left line and holding on to the right one alone. When Hasidim are revealed completely, we rise into Binah, the sphira of Binah, and see that we can stay in mercy in all the desires. On this whole degree, then we begin to work with the desires of reception and ruse the left line. In other words, we begin to awaken the forces of Malchut and to accept the light of Chokmah in the receiving desires. So that's a brief, kind of a summary of how, this book works, and we get more into it in our courses. But I want to kind of close with this one clip, and then I'll have something to tell you. Okay, the Book of Psalms provides a special heartfelt program. This is why I recommend to you to read Psalms, because, well, let's see what he says. The Book of Psalms provides a special heartfelt program that connects us to the upper force of love found in nature. It stirs up our insides and illuminates us with the light of the upper force that acts directly against the evil inclination. King David was a great Kabbalist. King means serving everyone, bringing everyone to connection. His wars symbolize our work to connect with one another above rejection and hatred. He represents a force that attracts us upwards one step at a time until the climax of connection, love, and the ultimate redemption. So I'll answer a couple questions in just a moment, but I want to say that this book has a special power in it. And the power of Psalms is that it can bring you into balance with nature. And the more balanced you are with nature, the better life's going to be. And what does it mean to balance with nature? It means to be in none else besides Him. That there's one force, not many, one force operating the whole of reality. And this is what the book is all about. It's all about coming back to this singular force in reality. Now, let's see. Zorika says, how do you move it to the right? How do you move to the right line? So this I said, for this, you can't do the whole wisdom of Kabbalah. That's already the entire wisdom of Kabbalah. You can't do the whole wisdom of Kabbalah right here and now, but this is why I recommend for you to join our courses. And I particularly recommend the Blueprint of Creation course. Also, if you sign up for our course now, you'll get access to what we're going to do in just a minute, which is an exclusive Zoom session for KabU students, wherein we're going to actually open up one of the Psalms in particular and explain it. But I recommend to sign up for our courses. When you do, you get access, first of all, to the beginner courses with Tony, 2 full long courses, and then you also get access to this kind of little Netflix of spirituality, where we have the Emergent Universe course, we have this Blueprint of Creation course, and I recommend to start with the Blueprint of Creation course. My teacher also, Dr. Michael Lightman, he also recommended that students in the beginning learn about the Sefirot, the Partsufim, the Olamot, the worlds. This is kind of a good starting point. So I really recommend the Blueprint of Creation course, and there are others here as well. But what do I want to say in the end? Basically, let's see if there's any other questions that we need to absolutely answer here. So let's see. Okay, I think we've answered most of the questions have been answered, and if you take our courses, you're going to kind of delve more deeply into that. But takeaway is that this is a very special book that you can have and instantly be connected to the upper force. You'll see that when you read this text, it just puts you into a different state than you felt before, one that is closer to nature, closer to this force called none else besides Him. With that, we're going to conclude and jump to our exclusive Zoom session. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time.